Good evening, everyone. Welcome into Evening Plus. I'm Julia Gorman, joined by meteorologist Blake Hansen, who has been a busy man alongside the rest of our weather team. Obviously, we had significant severe weather across much of West Michigan yesterday. Blake, so far, we do know about a couple of confirmed tornadoes.
Yeah, in all, 3 tornadoes across lower Michigan from yesterday's storm, 2 of which are here in our neck of the woods of West Michigan. So the first one we'll talk about is Galesburg to Battle Creek. I remember that one specifically from yesterday evening when we were kind of trying to figure out a few of those notches along the line that was coming through, some of that debris signature. That is determined to be an EF0 tornado, approximately 80-mile-per-hour winds.
Wow.
That tornado on the ground for almost 10 miles. So that was a pretty long-lived tornado there to be on the ground for 10 miles. The other one just to the north, St. Mary's Lake to Bellevue, that's also in Calhoun County to the north of Battle Creek. So these 2 tornadoes very close together. That was another EF0 tornado, approximately 85 miles per hour. There was also another tornado, an EF1 strength tornado in parts of Eaton to Ingham County, generally from the Charlotte area to, I think, the western half of Ingham County itself. I know a lot of folks are probably wondering about Martin into the door. That location right there. National Weather Service is surveying that still. I have a feeling that will likely be a confirmed tornado, but we're still waiting their confirmation. I'm sure there's a few other spots around West Michigan they're also looking at. One last thing. You know, when this all began, you were with us, Julia, all night. The wind at the lakeshore. Now, that 76-mile-per-hour wind at Springfield, I'm still wondering what that was from. Straight line wind or maybe close to that surge with that EF0 tornado near Battle Creek. That's at the Battle Creek Airport there. But all the rest of our wind reports outside of at the Ford International Airport in Cascade Township, Norton Shores, Grand Haven, Saugatuck, 70-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts. There's still unofficially that wind gust from Roosevelt Park in Muskegon of 80 miles per hour.
Which we know there were a lot of power outages in that area, so that makes a lot of sense.
So we had a mixed bag between straight line wind and even spin up tornadoes yesterday, and I'm assuming we're going to add on to that number of tornadoes as we go in time through this weekend as those surveys come to an end. And we also have a risk, we're going to talk about this later this half hour of tonight, this evening into tonight. Not as extent as last evening, but still the possibility.
Still need to be weather aware.
Yes, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, sort of toward the end of the show, we will get the very latest on that for you. We do have team coverage continuing here on Evening Plus across West Michigan. Our meteorologist Colton Woods, he's along the lakeshore with a look at damage in Saugatuck and Muskegon. And then Callie Lichter and Josh Albertus, they're both in the Martin area, as we were just mentioning, a really hard-hit area with a lot of damage. We want to begin with our Josh Albertus. He's been to a bunch of different spots, Josh, in that Martin area. And what are you seeing, right now as cleanup continues?
Yeah, kind of around the area, Julia, I would say that the phrase widespread damage is honestly pretty subtle for what we've been seeing. This is all over the place. This is incredibly destructive from what we've seen. We've gone to places like the main drag through Martin earlier today. A lot of cleanup to be done there. We went to, in the Otsego area, a campground over there for a lot of RVs. A few of them, at least one of them flipped all the way over, assumedly from those winds. And then we were here at this farm today too, this family farm just outside of the main village area in Martin. Earlier during the newscast, if you were watching, you saw us kind of show you those roof pieces that had kind of strewn all across the property, even across the street in the field over there. We showed you pretty much the skeletons of those barns that were left over. One was half collapsed at that point. There was a lot of destruction there. And even if you pan over, we're going to pan slowly so we try not to lose the signal. But now this is a power pole. It was snapped completely in half, broken and fallen onto this barn right next to it. Crews are now here trying to replace it with a new one. That's what you see going on right now. So they're trying to continue that cleanup. But I know Callie talked about this a lot in her newscast as well, but there were people all over this property today, community members, friends, neighbors of the people who live here. And you could just really feel a community spirit there in trying to get this cleaned up, but you know, even outside of that main drag, I mean, one of the best adjectives I could probably use to describe what we saw outside of the inner village of Martin was sporadic. I mean, you would see kind of the damage you saw at places like this farm, and then you'd go off, you know, other wares outside of the village, and you know, you'd see what seemed to be, you know, barely anything. I'm sure many people are still probably without power in this area as that tries to get restored, but you know, cosmetically, I mean, you really couldn't see much just depending on the area. It really felt like there were these pockets of really heavy destructive forces here, but then in other areas, not seemingly as much at all. So, you know, this is the kind of scene that we're seeing. A lot of people are still going through this cleanup, though. It's probably going to take, you know, I think the owner here was telling me, you know, they're hoping to have a lot of the cleanup done by the end of the summer. So, you know, you're kind of seeing from all the visuals that we were seeing today, all the visuals that we were showing you, you know, there's a lot of work to be done here. It's not gonna, once we come back to the station, it's not gonna end for them. They're going to be working on this probably for weeks, for maybe even months in some instances, to get this cleaned up and get some semblance of what it was before that storm system rolled in last night, Julia.
Yeah, Josh, I think, you know, what you were saying there is very typical of tornadic activity, where, as exactly you were saying, you see some areas untouched, and then a couple feet over, you know, things just destroyed. And the power pole that you just showed us, really incredible there. I mean, I don't know how deep they typically put power poles into the ground, but I know it's a good at least 5 or 6 feet. And to see that just cracked like a toothpick, some really incredible video there, Josh. We appreciate your reporting, and I mean, just your reaction to all of that.
You know, it just shows the power,
strength of Mother Nature,
Mother Nature. You know, and yesterday when we were highlighting the risk that was doable with these storms, you know, no matter if it was straight line wind damage or potentially, I'm assuming, based on what we saw last night on radar, this is going to be a confirmed tornado here in the Martin area towards Dorr. You know, no matter what it is, both of those hazards can provide extensive damage. And we're seeing that all around in pockets of West Michigan. So yeah, it's you know, it's one thing to forecast it, it's one thing to cover it, but once you see the aftermath of it, it really, you know, opens up your eyes. Yeah,
and thankfully we don't know of anyone who was severely injured or died in these storms, which is, you know, the great news, but that damage is also so devastating. Our Callie Lichter also live in the Martin area. Callie, you've been more at the middle high school there in Martin, watching people sort of rally together and clean up. What's happening at this hour?
Yeah, Julia. So the you know, the school complex over there, the high school, it's to the left of me on the other side of East Allegan Street. I'm more towards, you know, the village center. I'm gonna step out of the way so you can see some of this damage. And Blake, I know you were saying this isn't a confirmed tornado, might possibly could be, but this is mild compared to what we were seeing earlier this morning. I mean, you know, what Josh was saying, trees completely uprooted, taking out driveways, taking out sidewalks. I know in the past couple of hours that we've just been standing out here, you know, for our nightside shows and everything, a lot of the trees have been cleaned up and it looks, you know, kind of somewhat back to normal. A lot of houses had tree limbs on top of them. I think we've been out here since 10:30ish, and yeah, a lot of trees on houses. As you can see, a lot of snap trees. We're currently in a church parking lot. We talked to a pastor and also to the superintendent and CFO from Martin Public Schools, who both echoed this same sentiment, Julia. You know, the reason why they're cleaning up somewhat, you know, as fast as they can after your town is, you know, severely damaged by severe weather is because Martin really focuses on community. You know, everyone is one big family. They all know each other and everyone really comes out to help. So I believe, you know, we have a couple sound bites from both the superintendent of Martin Public Schools along with the pastor of the church whose parking lot we're standing in right now.
We just have a team atmosphere here. It's kind of all hands on deck is one of our mottos. We've got a lot of unsung heroes on our team. It's team, whether it's sports or staff or cleanup efforts from a tornado. We just have a really great group here.
I think there's some people just going through town saying, hey, we didn't get hit bad, let us help you out. We feel extremely blessed because so many people came to help us. It truly is the nature of this community. They come together for illnesses, they come together for deaths, They come together for disaster, obviously, but this community has always been like that.
And Callie, what really strikes me there, those trees with trunks, larger than my arms can go, probably been there for hundreds of years, at least decades, and in seconds, minutes, toppled over like that.
I know our Sam Jacks talked to a homeowner a little bit down the road there earlier this morning about how he had a tree and it seemed to be in between his and his neighbor's yard, maybe closer into his yard. It was 100 years old, maybe a little bit over 100 years old, just toppled over. And luckily it didn't hit either of their houses. It landed like straight in the middle. But again, we've seen some houses that have been heavily impacted by the trees falling over. And talking to both Samantha Ball, who's the superintendent of Martin Public Schools, and Maggie Stockton, who is the pastor here at the church, the United Methodist Church in Martin, they both said it seems like the damage went straight down the center of town. You can definitely see that from the debris that's still left over.
Yeah. All right, Callie, we appreciate your extended reporting for us here on Evening Plus, and we'll see you back here at the station. Yeah, and I mean, as far as, it's so interesting to think about from you going from the radar and looking at the maps and everything that measures velocity. And then, I mean, it must be so interesting to see how that matches up with then the damage the next day. I mean, it lines up most of the time.
It gives us, when you look back at it, that confirmation, in future events, when we're surveying similar stories, because we're going to have a situation in the future at one given point where we deal with more severe weather.
Right.
And it could be a similar story, especially with how the orientation of that squall line was yesterday, where we were looking for those individual notches along the line. These were not classic supercell tornadoes that were coming through West Michigan. These were, spin-ups along the line, and we were trying to, in real time, find these notches along the line. And,
it's hard stuff.
And then overlay that with, luckily radar has come such a long way over the last several decades that we can indicate debris away from rain or hail.
We
can separate,
when it's
the difference
stuff
between meteorological items to non-meteorological items, such as tree branches, such as shingles or siding from houses, any type of damage. And that's what we were seeing in the Martin area, and then extending into Dorr was that little yellow kind of bluish blob that was showcasing that things were being lofted up into the atmosphere. And now we see why, because there's been extensive damage across the area.
Yeah, those images from that barn that Josh was at. I mean, there was plenty of stuff going in the air there. All right, and meteorologist Colton Woods was a huge part, of course, of our weather coverage last night. He has been along the lakeshore today surveying damage. Colton, where are you right now, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, hey Julia, we're here at Pere Marquette Beach, technically Pere Marquette Park, which is a park right next to Pere Marquette Beach and the deck, a familiar place along the lakeshore, and there's some pretty extensive damage, especially tree damage here in the park. If you look behind me, you can see a massive tree with tons of roots just ripped right out of the ground as well. So really impressive tree, pretty healthy tree too, I would say. Really large tree that just got knocked over, likely from straight line winds. There was a tornado warning in this area, but this most likely was from damaging winds, as we did get reports of unconfirmed 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts in Roosevelt Park, which is not too far from the place that we are currently at right now along the beach. But we did also talk earlier today to a Marquette neighborhood resident where a very large tree was split into two after strong winds moved through. The residents believe that the large tree was actually rotting out and super weak, which allowed the wind to just tear it into two pieces. The tree also avoided a house, which is some good news, but sadly it did hit a neighbor's car while she was also in the vehicle. Really scary, but thankfully she is safe from the storm.
Heard the thunder and the lightning was hitting the ground, and it looked like giants stepping down and hitting the earth. And I said, Lord, just let me make it to the driveway so I can run in the house. And when I pulled in my driveway, all I heard was boom. And that tree right there had fallen on my car. It was the Lord said, go to the right, get in the grass, and then get in the house as fast as possible.
I mean, Colton, talking to that woman, you can just hear the emotion in her voice. What was it like talking to her? I know your conversation obviously extended past just that.
Yeah, Julia, she was really just grateful that she was okay. She just came home from church and she was just in her car, about to actually head inside. And that's when part of the tree split and ended up landing on the back half of her car. So it didn't hit where she was sitting in the driver's seat, thankfully. But right after that, she quickly bolted out of her vehicle, ran into her basement and sought shelter as those strong winds moved through.
Gosh, so scary. And I mean, Colton, you were here in the studio last night assisting in forecasting what was happening. Now being out there, this is something I love that our whole meteorological team does, but being out there and seeing this, what is that like for you as a meteorologist?
I don't know if cool is the right word, but it's interesting to see, especially the damage after the fact, because like Blake and you were just talking about, you can see the velocity on the radar, you can see where the strongest winds are, where there's possible rotation, and then going out in the field and actually seeing that possible damage that you thought was likely on looking at the radar, and then actually seeing it in person, it's pretty astounding.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Colton, we so appreciate you being out there for us on Evening Plus. And I mean, again, I know it sounds redundant, but these huge trees with these roots that have been growing for years and years and years pulled up like that. The chunks of the sidewalk just pulled up like a piece of paper or a feather or something.
And you know, I know at times it might sound like we're overhyping things
Right,
at times,
but, I mean, you're
or
seeing it.
people get sick of us saying the same thing over and over again, but in just a matter of minutes. These storms came through in a matter of 2.5, 3 hours last night.
Yep.
And we have 200,000 power outages across the state. You have numerous pockets of damage across the area. So, you know, that's why we talk about being weather aware and having that
How
plan in
important that
place
is.
and, you know, being prepared for situations like this.
And of course, we'd love it if none of that had happened last night
Exactly.
and, you know, our forecasting had been incorrect. But, you know, we do our very best. You guys do your very best to be as accurate as possible and keep people safe, because like that woman who we just heard from, you know, I mean, thankfully, no one was seriously hurt.
Yeah.
No one died.
Every time you get through a severe weather event with no injuries or fatalities, that is a miracle in my opinion, because of how powerful these storms are.
Okay. All right. Well, Blake is going to rejoin us in just a couple of minutes to talk about tonight. Again, we are expecting it to be less severe than last night, but still really important to know what's going on and where it's going to be. We're going to take a